good morning, good afternoon, wherever it is, whatever time it is where you're at. I just wanted to give this because it's been something that I have been thinking about for a couple of days. And forgive me if I'm rambling on because I did not write anything down or any points that I wanted to touch on. So I'm just free flowing for this. I want to call this identity crisis. And this is to African American brothers and sisters and blacks in general, whatever you like to be called. And let me go ahead and dispel the known hatred or the known criticism that you're going to get anytime you talk about being pro-black. It doesn't mean anti-white. It doesn't mean you're racist. It doesn't mean that you don't like other people because you are showing love for your own race. Many races do that. White people do it, or Caucasian. Latinos do it. They support each other every day. One love, one familia. They love themselves. So you're going to get it regardless. So whatever, bring it about. Back to this identity crisis. I think we as African Americans or as black people have lost sight of who we are, in my opinion. And no, I don't have any PhDs, any doctorates, or any of that nature. I'm just a human being, and I think that comes first before even trying to get into the study of human behavior. I can remember growing up in a time where, people were rocking cross colors, FUBU, wearing African medallions and things like that. 5%ers were heavy. Nation of Islam was heavy in the streets. And I think we had a sense of pride within our culture, within oneself. The music was different, not to sit there and try to get on the fact of how rap has changed. I'm not worried about that, whether you're conscious or not. It's just, I think we were more concerned with the pride of who we were. I can remember Budweiser had the Shaka Zulu series playing on television, and that's another thing that I look at, that we talk about how much Roots is played, and you get people that will sit there and say, well, we need all the information. And information has been passed. I don't see anybody putting Shaka Zulu in circulation over and over on television. And I do think that there is an agenda there to demean and kind of program the mindset of the African American that you cannot win regardless of what you do. But I think before we can get into all that, first we got to identify with who we are. And that goes back to understanding your roots, also understanding the sacrifices that those before you have made, the things that they went through, the persecution, the racism, the segregation. I think once you get into that, then you can start digging into how one should present themselves, or how you should behave, or how you should carry yourself in a professional demeanor, so that you can demand that and command that respect that should be afforded to you. Not just walking around with the attitude that I'm a man, I'm on this earth, you need to give me that equal. We know that's not going to happen. So let's get off of that tip and get on to something that's more concerned with oneself. Fads are fads. Clothing is going to come. Yeah, we can talk about how we dress, shirts tucked in, pants creased, being presentable, because I had to learn that you could have something within you, something very valuable, but if a person in their mind doesn't perceive it, then they won't come get that out of you, whether it be information, whether it be intelligence, whether it be any type of access to you that you might have, business information or anything, because if I look at you and I don't see it, then I'm probably not going to expect it of you. And we can say what we want about it, but that is the way this world works, is off of perception. So with the identity crisis, I do know that back in the day, we've always had that where we want to dye our hair, get silky hair, or get this, weave and all this other stuff in. And then you hear people say, well, I'm satisfied, but, well, once you say but, you kind of dispel everything else before that. If you have pride within who you are and you are satisfied within yourself, then all of the other stuff is irrelevant. You don't need to go spend all your money on Silky 100 or whatever is out there. And it's not to take away from the beauty industry. You do what you do. But when you get back to the point of loving oneself, then you are satisfied within who you are naturally. And I think that we've gotten away from that. I think that we have been programmed by television, magazines, and things around us that tell us, what we should strive to look like. And then when we have the negative things about ourselves, we glorify that. We'll take the point of sitting there saying, hey, I'm country. Yeah, I put gold teeth in my mouth and rock long t-shirts and saggy pants, and I'm a savage. And we get pride in being the negative. We show a lot of pride in that, and we promote that. But we don't take the time to promote the positive. We don't promote the guys that are dressing the same way, or dressing to look professional, or going to school, or trying to do positive things. He a lame, or he this, that, and the other. And I just come from a different era. So yeah, I do think that we have gotten away from loving ourselves. We'll sit there and say, hey, girl, I'm thick, and I love myself. And you should always love yourself no matter what your size. But don't get to the point where we think it's okay not to be healthy, not to be health conscious. So we get to the fact that we glorify squeezing into jeans or squeezing into bodysuits and everything else, rather than sitting there and saying, I'm going to go to the gym, have some discipline about myself, and try to take care of my health. And I think that just comes from generations and generations of what has been just drilled into our mindset. A lot of us was not taught, go out, start a business, try to become something. It was always keep your head down, get that good job with benefits, and just do what you can. Where it's in other races, it's taught differently. So I just think we need to get back to identifying with who we are. Get back to loving who you are naturally. Quit with all the eyelashes and drawing on your eyebrows and changing this and that about yourself. If you're going to sit there and say that God created you in his own image, then be happy with that image. Be satisfied with that image. Be satisfied with who you are as an individual, and continue to strive on loving oneself, building one's character, becoming stronger within oneself, and stop putting so much into makeup. And I've always told a lot of people that I feel when you put on makeup, you are making up for something you feel that you lack. And if you feel that you lack with something within yourself, then you need to do some self-analyzation and look at yourself within. Get butt naked with yourself, as I say, and be able to accept all the faults or all the perfect imperfections of oneself. That's just my 2 cents on it. And like I said, without having any points written down and really going into depth on what I wanted to talk about, I think that we just need to get back to identifying with who we are, loving who we are. And, we're all guilty of it. I'm not perfect. I'm not better than anyone else. We are stronger in numbers, and hey, there might be a brother that can pull me up by something, and I would very much appreciate it. I think sometimes we get caught up in oneself that we forget that we need to use tact to educate one another, and you start to get into the point where you're demeaning them or talking down to them rather than talking to them. And I think that's what we need to get back to also with our young generation, not just getting on radio platforms and talking about how garbage they are or how times have changed. Okay, well, show them the reason why we need to keep that tradition going. Show them the reason why you need to keep that value of life, because it is lost upon this generation. And I don't blame the generation. I think kids will do what we allow them to. And of course, we can get into all the things that the system has put in place to keep you from disciplining your child and things like that. So you need to make them aware of that. You need to make them conscious of that. You need to speak to them and show them the pros and cons of this, that, and the other. So when we start looking at how many African Americans or blacks are in jail, or how many African American or blacks are being killed in the streets, not just by cops, but by one another, by our own people. And because even with that, I see that with the cops, we get to the point where we feel that now that this is heightened, that we have this cop against black crime or death rate, that we don't have to respect the law. I see a lot of videos where people say, well, hey, this would happen. Yeah, it did. But you got to also look at yourself and say, did I cause this to happen? And this is not to put blame on us as a people and sit there and say, well, white people do this. It ain't about them. It's about you. We create a perception, and until you change the perception of how you are looked at in society, you're going to always be treated a certain way. So if I look up every day, and I'm a guy that's come from some of the worst streets in America in East St. Louis, Illinois. So you don't think that if I see a couple of guys on the side of a street that look a certain way, that I'm not going to clutch my heat or make sure my strap is ready, because that's the perception. That's the perception that I get when I see them guys on that corner. Not necessarily saying that they come to do me harm, but the perception in my mind is be on guard in case it does come to that. So all in all, like I said, I think we need to get back to identifying with oneself and who we are. And I get into all that love and all that other stuff, because we cannot get together and unify to build communities, to build organizations, to build prosperity until we can identify with who we are as an individual, who we are as a people. Once you get that, you start that foundation, then you can start building on other things. But we want to talk about supporting each other, building prosperity and things like that. You can't get to that if people don't have a same common ground to start from. If we as a people don't have a common understanding of where we come from and where we're trying to go, none of that will work. And that's just my opinion. Give your 2 cents, leave your comments. I would love to have some dialogue about it. If it's just ignorance, I don't need to hear it. I like facts. Bring the facts. I don't have a problem rebuting or being rebuted with facts. We all have emotions. We all have our feelings, but let's get to the seriousness of the problem. I'm out. Enough said. One love.